NDP leader Marit Stiles and MPP Jenny Stevens are joined by former NHL player Akeem Aliu for an announcement at Queen's Park. Let's listen in live.
And learning for so many kids in the Greater Toronto Area. It's also a huge pool of talent for the NHL in the current playoff season. I think it's 46 NHL players are GTHL alumni. There's no doubt that these are passionate and talented people, but there does appear to be a cash for access culture that is giving some kids more opportunity than others. And when wealthy parents pay for their kid's spot on a GTHL team, does that mean that other kids are missing out? We want to ensure that hockey is a sport for everyone, where anyone with talent and drive can make it. Today, in light of these allegations, I am calling on the provincial government to launch an investigation into these very serious allegations and do its part to end cash for access culture in amateur hockey. I am also calling on them to close any loopholes that the owners of these shell companies may have exploited. Akeem Aliu is with us today. Many of you will know Akeem as a former NHL player, the chair of the Hockey Diversity Alliance, doing some very, very important work. And Akeem has also been sounding the alarm on this issue and has been working tirelessly to improve opportunities for marginalized young people with hockey talent. But first, before we go to Akeem, I want to turn it over to MPP Jenny Stevens, our NDP critic for sports, and a proud hockey mom and grandma.
That's right. Well, thank you, Marit, for the introduction. Good morning. The reporting today about the GTHL is deeply concerning, and it is critical that we make sure that amateur hockey is fair and that children playing hockey in Ontario have an equal opportunity based on talent, skill, and not wealth. I am Jenny Stevens, the Member of Provincial Parliament for the City of St. Catharines and the critic for sports and tourism for Ontario's official opposition. More than any of these titles, I am a hockey mom to my children and my grandchildren. And I was also a hockey player back in the day. I was the first female in my elementary school to play on a male hockey team. Later, when my own daughter entered into playing hockey, she would become the only female on a competitive boys hockey team. Hockey is deeply personal to my family, as it is for so many Canadians. Whether it is financial constraint, lack of access, or discrimination based on gender, race, or other factors, we must be active in confronting these challenges to ensure that they do not hinder any child's ability to participate in the game they love and love to play. Hockey is part of our Canadian identity. So are the values of fairness, inclusion, and accessibility. Hockey should be inclusive and accessible for any child that wants to participate, and it is our responsibility to support the members in our community that are doing that work. It is my hope that all political parties are aligned on removing these barriers and doing what is right for all of the children playing amateur hockey. Now I will turn it over to Akeem.
Thank you so much to both of you. First and foremost, thank you everyone for being here. One thing I wanted to start off was to make this crystal clear. For me, I'm not looking at this through a political lens. I think this is a nonpartisan topic that all families should have a vested interest in, no matter the political views. To me, this is a topic of corruption, tax evasion, side payoffs to get children on teams, and a lack of access outside of the elite. As I mentioned, this should be something all families around our province care deeply about. I've also spoken to all parties involved. I've talked to the federal government. I've spoken to the Conservative Party as well, from Neil Lumsden to Doug Ford, and obviously folks, as I mentioned, at the federal government. So I believe this is something that all parties should rally around because it's important for the integrity of our sport, and I want to thank the folks, Merritt and Janine at the NDP, for making this a priority, because it's crucial for our sport that's seeing registration drop at an alarming rate. I believe children are being used as pawns by adults to make millions of dollars by selling unrealistic dreams. For myself, it's really a sad thing to say, because hockey is what got my family out of poverty, to be honest. But to me, what's happening right now with our game is a national embarrassment on so many levels. I believe anybody who continues to stay silent on these topics is complicit. I call for a serious investigation into unlawful actions of what members in the GTHL are doing. It's one of those things that's become very difficult for me in a lot of ways, because it's been normalized. If you walk into an arena, I'm obviously very invested and on the ground with minor hockey and grassroots hockey, and you have discussions with parents, and it's almost in passing. They'll talk about teams being sold for millions of dollars and coaches taking payoffs to get other children on teams over kids that may be more talented. And it's been happening for decades, and it's become normalized in the minor hockey society. For me, this is not a topic about being black, white, or your gender, background, whatever it may be. Hockey's expensive for all. I don't think there's any family out there that's happy to pay $10,000 to play AAA. And an organization like ourselves, who wanted to come in to offset these fees and promote BIPOC talent with the changing of the demographics, and especially in the GTA, and kind of being not allowed into the quote-unquote elite old boys club, because they felt that with us lowering our fees, it would make other organizations look bad to force them to lower fees. For myself, I think the GTHL leadership needs to step up. There's a lot of, I don't know, essentially when these topics come up, their answer is, well, we just didn't know anything about anything. So I think it's time to keep them accountable at the board level, and also at the executive director level and the president level. These actions are illegal. We're selling not-for-profits for millions of dollars. This is just something that we can't stand idle by. And it's one of those things, again, I think hockey's a microcosm of some of the issues that are happening in society, where elite price out everybody else. And it's one of those things that I think the elite want to hold on to, especially in the game of hockey, because of how expensive it is. For myself, I have nothing to gain here, to be quite honest. I've played in the GTHL. That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this. I played in the OHL. I was able to make it to the NHL, but I feel that I was lucky to do that. And I don't think that should be the case for kids going forward. I think if you have the talent, it's one of those things that you should be able to have the access to play our game, and not lose spots based on your financial means. I'm a kid that grew up not too far from here in Parkdale. I'm born in Africa, raised in the Ukraine, came here with nothing, lived on welfare, government housing, and hockey is really what got my family to the position that we're in today. But so many kids like myself slip through the cracks, and I don't want to see that happen any longer. Myself and what the Hockey Diversity Alliance are doing, we were these kids, and that's why we're so passionate about the work. And we just feel that it's our duty now that we were able to be lucky to make it to the highest level in the world, and we have a platform to speak on these issues, and it's our duty to make a smoother transition for the next generation, to not have to go through some of the issues that we went through. So when I never expected 2 years ago, when the GTHL came to us to ask for help in promoting diversity in the sport, to help them access the BIPOC community in the GTA. I really never knew I was going to uncover this web of ugliness and deceit that's going on in minor hockey. But in a lot of ways, I think that's one of those things that was important for us to uncover, to be able to attack these issues head on. And I'm hoping all parties take it serious. So I really appreciate you both for making this a priority and giving myself and everyone else a voice to speak on these things. And I'm hoping that an investigation will happen swiftly here. I think what the GTHL is doing right now with their own internal investigation, we know how those things go. It's the GTHL investigating the GTHL. I'm not sure how much honesty we're going to get out of that. So I call on all parties to take this extremely serious, and I'm hoping we can get to a good place here. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Akeem, and thank you so much for your courage and your strength in speaking out and using, as you said, your platform to try to make life a little better for kids who really just want a level playing field. As Akeem said, this is not a partisan issue. We really believe it's about doing the right thing, and we're hoping the government will agree with us on this. I think a lot of parents, kids out there, suspect that this is going on. It's the talk, it's what we whisper about. It's what people have suspected, and you have that feeling as a parent, I think, many times that something maybe just doesn't sit right. It's time to do something about that. And so, again, we're going to be calling on the provincial government to launch an investigation. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Okay, you said you talked to Minister Lumsden. What did he say?
So we actually spoke to him months before a lot of this stuff came to light. When I was kind of going through my back and forth with the GTHL, trying to make something work, we told him about some of the issues that have been happening. He seemed to have been supportive at the time. I think that support kind of tailed off a little bit. I'm not sure the reasoning of it. I can't speak for him. I think that's a question for him to answer. But at the end of the day, I thought it was important to go to the current Minister of Sport and let him know what was happening. And we just felt not enough action was taken. But there's always room to kind of make a wrong right.
I'm already dating myself now, but I made it to junior B. Didn't love what you did back in mid '80s, early '80s actually. Cheating myself. And there's always been a rumor, even when I coached my kids growing up playing hockey, that rumor has always been around for decades. And I saw it when I played AAA hockey myself. We'd play certain teams out in, without mentioning names, out in the northwest part of the city. There were kids that we knew would have their addresses changed from, because back in the day, I'm not sure how it works now, but you had to live in a certain area to play for a certain team.
Same now.
And kids would change their addresses, legally change their addresses to play, and they were given television sets, and they were given sleeping, just you name it, they got it off like Amazon. These hockey teams are giving it to these kids. Has it progressed in your view, or do you think it's always been this way? And I'm talking about baseball as well. I'll give you a quick example. My son was talking to playing for this ball team, and we went down to Philadelphia, and I was talking to the other parents. And one parent was paying $2,000. The other parent was free. The other kid was paying $10,000. And there was always that dream that your kid's next kid going to the Blue Jays, which was, I always found, so we quit. After I found out, we left. So all of this to ask you, do you find this has gotten bigger since you've been in the game? Because it's been a rumor forever. And maybe follow up, Mart. I don't recall a government ever getting involved with this. Am I wrong, or is this the first time that a government stepped in? Because this has been going on, and it is about time something's been done about it. So what are your comments?
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think it's getting worse. If you look back to my time when I was playing, these issues arose around Stuart Hyman. Was doing similar things decades ago. It's one of those things that this is obviously, I'm very entrenched in this topic. I'm hearing people are getting their UCC tuitions covered to play on AAA teams. Tons of addresses being changed. When I was playing, currently happening, I know of kids that are doing it because obviously I'm involved with the coaching and the general managers of these teams. And like I said, to your point, it's so normalized now that they don't even try to hide it in the arenas anymore. I live in Niagara Falls. I'll just use my buddy's address in Toronto and play on this team, and it's happening at all levels of minor hockey. So to answer your question, unfortunately, I think it's getting worse, and I think that the reason why it's getting worse is because hockey's getting more and more expensive. I played on the Toronto minor leagues growing up, and a lot of folks would say, I know Arun would agree, a lot of folks would say we're one of the best minor hockey teams ever. We produced 7 NHL players from one team, but we were paying $3,500 to play AAA at the time. It's $10,000 now. 7,500 to 10,000. So it's just progressively getting more and more expensive, and I think that's kind of the way that the elite are keeping the sport essentially to themselves by continuing to raise the prices of registration.
Before you answer, sorry, just to follow up to your question. Do you think there should be some education to parents as well? Because being in sports for forever, I've seen parents whose kids could barely throw a baseball, who are paying $10,000 for their kid to be on a traveling team, convinced that they're going to be the next, you name the pitcher. And when you tell them the truth, they're offended by that, and they just go side with the guy that's taking the 10 grand from him. So should there be some education to parents as well with regards to paying more money is not going to make your kid any much better?
100%. 100%. I think it's one of those things that it's difficult to tell a parent that their kid is maybe not up to par as to other kids, or not up to par to that level. And a lot of parents, especially in the game of hockey, think money solves problems. So on top of that, the more questions you ask, the more dive into some of these issues. We'll have some of these coaches saying, well, come to my private sessions, right? Give me $300 an hour, I'll get your kid on the team, on top of extra registration. So they think the more money they throw at the problem, that's going to fix kind of the issues of the talent level. So 100%, I think that's an issue that's would be really tough to solve, because there's not a lot of parents that you're going to be able to tell that your kid's not good enough or not going to make it. But I think who's really complicit is the people that are taking advantage of selling these dreams that are unrealistic.
Can I just add something? Sorry, very quickly. I just want to say, like, I used to work with for the union that represents professional performers, and I find it's very similar to the way that young kids and families are exploited in acting and modeling and things like that. Very, very similar. So yeah, we definitely need to educate families and give them the tools they need to protect their kids and not have unrealistic expectations. But it's also up to government to make sure that we regulate these things, so that we protect those kids and those parents who are very vulnerable to these kinds of temptations, right? They want their kids to succeed. They want all of those things for their kids. So government does have a really important role to play here.
Well, this actually goes into my question, actually. So, Jenny, when news came out about allegations of degrading initiations in hockey, including former players from Ontario who played in the OHL, for example, the Quebec government almost immediately made a parliamentary commission to address this. Why didn't you come out at the time to ask this government for similar action? And why is it only now that this news story is coming out about inappropriate money exchanges within the GTHL that this is the time that you're asking the government to take action?
Right. All and any allegations that should be taken seriously. And if it's from minor hockey all the way to the OHL, as you mentioned, they all have their own merits. And when these allegations were brought forward, I went across and spoke to the minister, and we've had conversations. We have to remember it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we'll be taking those quite seriously and working together to try to get you to bring them forward.
So is this investigation, is it only going to be addressing this specific issue, or would you be open to questioning more, like David Branch from the OHL, for example, like infected with the commissioner there? Would it be more open?
Yeah, like I said, each and every allegation has its own merits. So we'll be dealing with them on individual basis, but every allegation is so serious. And right now we're dealing with the GTHL. We're talking about children that have barriers in front of them that might not ever have that opportunity to be able to play hockey at a competitive level just because of their parents aren't as wealthy as their neighbors or another child on the team. So we'll be taking each allegation seriously.
I have a question for MPP Stevens. I guess you said that the GTHL is basically like lack transparency in the reports, I guess, and they are sort of conducting their own investigation. I guess what mechanisms do you sort of plan to install to ensure that it's not just the GTHL reporting on the GTHL?
Yeah, well, that's why we're asking the province to investigate, because it's not good enough. You can't have the GTHL just simply conducting an investigation of themselves, right? That's obviously not necessarily the best approach. So that's why we're asking the province to step in and to conduct their own investigation. It's really important. And I was asked earlier, like, have there been similar investigations? Honestly, none that I can remember in Ontario, although I may be wrong. I do think that, though, and to your point too, like, we've seen, I know I've been watching very closely and speaking out for the last few years about the increased incidence of reports of abuse, et cetera, in sport. And I'm as somebody who was myself an athlete, I think it's extraordinary to me that these things are still happening. in 2021, right? Like the 2023, that we're still seeing this, and I think it's well past time and due that government stepped in and actually started to investigate and put in place measures that are going to prevent this kind of thing. I mean, in this case, we're talking, as Jenny said, about a very specific situation where we have, indication that there could be cash for access in the GTHL. And so we want the government to step in because this is about barriers to, kids having access to the same, who have hopes and dreams, just like any other child, to have access to the same opportunities.
Just to follow up on that, you did mention sort of this idea.
Okay, we've been listening in to Leader of the Opposition, Marit Stiles, along with former NHLer Akeem Aliu, calling on the provincial government to end cash for access culture in the AAA League, the GTHL. Akeem Aliu saying that these unlawful actions need to be investigated by the province of members of the GTHL, saying that not-for-profit teams are being sold for millions of dollars, and that's not giving equal opportunity to other marginalized populations and kids.